This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. In the early morning of February 28th, Donald Trump launched a bombing campaign against Iran. Turns out when he promised unconditional surrender, he didn't tell us it would be ours. Wednesday, Trump signed his name to what is called a Memorandum of Understanding, which he obviously had no understanding of. Well, how could he? It's a page and a half, 800 words. For Trump, that's like asking him to read War and Peace. Excursion and Peace. It wasn't a war. He said it was an excursion. Trump kept saying, this is not a war. He's right. It's a debacle. Biggest military blunder in American history. They're calling it their Versailles Accord. Well, if you're going to lose a war, we're better than France. America's commander-in-chief was presented with the document, and his signature was just one in an endless series of Trump slapping his name on worthless items. Hey, he already put his name on a steak. Why not a turkey? Which is exactly what this 14-point memorandum is. It's a turkey. Give you an idea how bad this is. Even Lindsey Graham said it's no good. He said that, but then, this is true, Steve Witkoff, Trump's brilliant peace envoy, called Lindsey, and after what Lindsey described as a very lengthy and productive phone conversation, Witkoff convinced the unmarried South Carolina Republican senator that this deal was good for America. He did it by describing in precise detail what kind of underwear he had on. That's how they got Lindsey to agree that it's a good deal. During dinner with French President Emmanuel Macron, yes, Wednesday night, Trump signed a deal with Iran inside the Palace of Versailles. The Palace of Versailles, because we all remember how well the previous Treaty of Versailles turned out for everybody. And in case you don't remember, not good. It was the Treaty of Versailles that helped bring Hitler to power. Oh, that's why Trump signed this in Versailles. Now I see. Now it all makes perfect sense. In all fairness, this is far different from Woodrow Wilson's Treaty of Versailles, because unlike that Treaty of Versailles, this time the United States Senate isn't being consulted. But why should the U.S. Senate approve peace with Iran? It's not like they approved the war. No, this is all Donald Trump's peace. His war, his loss, his con. For those of you keeping score, our Senate never approved Woodrow Wilson's Treaty of Versailles. They approved the war. They didn't ratify the Treaty of Versailles. America never signed the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I. Senate wouldn't sign it. Congress eventually, 3 years later, declared an end to World War I. But the Treaty of Versailles was never ratified by our Senate. By law, the Senate must ratify all treaties, and war must be declared by both chambers of Congress. While the president serves as the commander-in-chief, only Congress gets to declare war, and only the Senate can ratify a foreign treaty. But for Trump, the Constitution isn't worth the paper it's written on, just like the deal he signed with Iran. Before the signing ceremony, the French president led the American president on a tour of Versailles as they soaked in the palace's bouillabaisse of gaudy Baroque architecture mixed with tasteless Rococo furniture set against the neoclassical excesses of brightly colored marble, Trump couldn't help but ask, "So where are all the slot machines?" All that's missing inside the Palace of Versailles is an all-you-can-eat shrimp buffet and Carrot Top 3 shows nightly. French President Emmanuel Macron also treated our president to a walk through Versailles' famed Hall of Mirrors, and despite accidentally catching his own reflection in one of those mirrors, Trump still wanted to eat. You would think, after seeing what he looks like, Trump would say, "I'm good. I'm disgusted." No, he still wanted to eat. It was during dinner when Trump signed this historic document. The only thing missing was Neville Chamberlain waving it while declaring peace in our time. Actually, Trump did sign the peace accord right after a dinner of lobster and caviar because Trump has a very strict rule: never agree to anything on an empty diaper. He says this all the time. Never make an important decision or go grocery shopping on an empty diaper. Trump says first have a nice meal, and only when your diaper feels stuffed, then you can think clearly enough to sign a deal or go grocery shopping. Truth be told, this deal was signed after dinner, but before dessert. So for Trump, the Versailles Accords were more like a palate cleanser. That's what the peace accords turned out to be, something bland and ineffectual to rest Trump's taste buds. I don't know if you watched. I don't know if you saw this. Trump remained seated, 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream on his right, the peace accords to his left, and our Secretary of State Marco Rubio standing above him. While signing the document, Trump growled incessantly for fear Rubio would try to steal from his bowl. The French president's wife was in attendance to see this historic signing, but not Melania. Melania gets triggered whenever she sees Donald signing things because it reminds her of how she foolishly agreed to renegotiate her prenup back in 2023 when Trump looked like he was going to jail. She signed away a lot, so she doesn't want to look at a pen in Donald's hands. Despite Macron's wife being there, the invitation said no wives. The wives were not invited. It was supposed to be just the guys enjoying expensive liquor, eating rich and fatty food, just like all 3 of Trump's bachelor parties, except this time a stripper didn't end up soaked in urine. Speaking of strippers, Melania was disappointed that she didn't get a tour Wednesday night of the palace. Melania loves visiting Versailles, especially the room where Marie Antoinette kept all her meme coins. Melania was in Paris earlier that day, attending a diplomatic reception hosted by the French president's wife, Brigitte. Now, the Macrons and the Trumps have much in common. Brigitte Macron is old enough to be Emmanuel Macron's mother, and Melania Trump is young enough to be Donald Trump's former mistress, who he stopped sleeping with 20 years ago after she got way too old. The French president and his wife have a delightful love story retold in multiple incarnations on Dateline NBC. You've heard this story thousands of times on NBC's Dateline. Keith Morrison is better suited to describe their relationship and marriage, but let me try, if I may, to describe their marriage. Suffice to say, the French are different from the United States. That's the first thing you need to understand about this marriage. The French are different, not just because they have a generous social safety net. They have a generous social safety net, and yet somehow, despite taking care of all its citizens, France is able to have the 7th largest economy in the world. Isn't that interesting? 68 million people living in France. It's not a lot, yet it's the 7th largest economy in the world with an incredibly generous social safety net. Something to keep in mind next time someone tells you that taking care of the people is bad for business. By the way, I know I'm going to get to the marriage in a second, but France has a very low union membership. It's as bad as the United States. Not too many people in France belong to unions. The difference is in France, the unions are so powerful, it's not workers who have to join a union, it's the government. The government provides all the benefits, not the unions. So while unions have a lot of power, the workers rely on the government for their pensions and health benefits and higher wages. Here in the United States, a lot of union leaders rather have the union and not the government provide the health benefits, because by doing that, you create a frightened rank and file who don't demand more from their union leaders, like negotiating better pay. I believe in unions, but I also believe government needs to be beholden to the workers. And we could learn a lot from the French. I believe in unions, but I believe in a strong and powerful government that provides all the things unions claim to provide. And we could have that. I'm going to get to the Macron marriage, but I'm in a really bad mood today, as we all are. We could have what France has. We don't need to chop off the head of a king. We can have what the French have. As soon as Americans wake up and realize the rich are never going to take care of us, we allow rich people, millionaires, billionaires, to run the Democratic Party. And then we wonder why we always end up with candidates who say, you know, when it comes to protecting the social safety net, raising the minimum wage, when it comes to universal child care, Medicare for all, it's complicated. No, it's not complicated. What's complicated is the Democratic Party is controlled by rich pricks who often exploit the working class way worse than Republicans do. Republicans just steal from the working class. Democrats pretend they're on our side. We're all in it together. No, we're not, you bet. Nancy Pelosi is worth, what, $500 million? How is she possibly in the same boat as I am? Donald Trump, and this is what you have to remember. Otherwise, it's insanity. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and getting the same result. I don't even know if that's the definition of insanity. But I do know Donald Trump is the definition of insanity. And you have to want what he wants. That's what you have to learn. If you want to win in government and politics, you have to want exactly what Donald Trump wants, or you're going to lose. You can't play baseball on a football field. If the other team is playing football, you can't play golf. You got to play football. So what does Donald Trump want? This is the game. He wants power, money, revenge, more power, more revenge, and more money. And that's all he wants. he gets up every morning and he wants money, power, and revenge. And I agree with him. The difference is he wants it for himself. I want it for the 99%. I want Democrats to wake up every morning and want the same exact thing Donald Trump wants: money, power, and revenge, but for the 99%. And until Democrats start electing politicians who want what Donald Trump wants, but for the 99%, we're always going to end up with the short end of the stick. Politics is the game of money, power, and revenge. That's all it is. It's not the game of affordability, inclusivity, and unity. It's money, power, and revenge. Government is the game of money, power, and revenge. If you come to Washington, D.C. to play some other game, you're going to lose. You need to elect members of Congress who want money, power, and revenge on behalf of the 99%. You have to elect members of Congress who want to take money and power away from the billionaires and then seek revenge for the billionaires' crimes against the economy, our democracy, and our climate. Revenge by locking these billionaires up so no one ever tries to do it again. That's all you have to think about. Money, power, and revenge for the 99%. Republicans win because they want money, power, and revenge, and they will say and do anything to convince enough voters that these voters can live vicariously through the rich and powerful, enjoying all their money, power, and revenge. When Democrats start running candidates who tell the American people, you don't have to live vicariously through the rich and powerful. I'm offering you, all of you, money, power, and revenge, then the Democrats are looking at permanent majorities. I know you want a fair and just society. You're not going to get one until the people, the 99%, know exactly what they want. And they have to be told what they want. So I'm telling you, you want money, power, and revenge. Unless a candidate is offering you money, power, and revenge, they don't deserve your vote. And by the way, revenge only in the shape of justice. Justice. Law and order. I'm big on law and order. Lock up the real criminals. Lock up the real criminals. Half the people in our prisons haven't even had a trial. They just plead out because they're poor. Anyway, I should calm down. Okay. Sorry. It's going to be a long and hot summer. I was talking about Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte, France's first couple. They met in high school. He was 15 and she 39. Brigitte was 39 and still in high school. By my calculations, she had been left back 20 times. You know, at some point you have to say, high school's just not for me, and you drop out. But not Brigitte. She hung in there. I don't know if she ever got her high school diploma, but she ended up with her high school crush, Emmanuel Macron. You know what? It's hot, I'm bothered, and I'm misremembering their story, so I apologize. This is why Keith Morrison from Dateline NBC should be telling you this love story, because you've heard it 100 times before on Dateline NBC. Now, as I recall, now I'm thinking clearly, okay, as I now remember it, Brigitte, 39, was 15-year-old Emmanuel's drama teacher. He married his high school drama teacher. And right there is why Emmanuel Macron became president of France. The man wasn't afraid to dream big. Or in this case, masturbate big. He made his masturbatory fantasies come true. And if you can do that, you can become president. What 15-year-old boy doesn't fantasize about marrying his incredibly hot 39-year-old drama teacher? I know I did. But sadly, Mr. Niederlander was already taken. Mr. Niederlander. What an evening, anyway. I'm sorry. Is anybody even here? I am filled with so much rage. I have so much rage inside of me, and I don't even know where to begin. I wake up in the morning, and I have so much rage and anger. I don't even care if anybody's listening to. I don't care if I have an audience. I don't care that Facebook thinks this show is too sexual in nature. Apparently, as I mentioned on the last episode, my hot ass is problematic for Mark Zuckerberg over at Facebook, and they're throttling me back due to the sexual nature of this show. I swear to God, they sent me a note. This is why I don't curse, by the way. I never curse on the show because if you want to shut me up, you can't accuse me of being filthy. So if I'm being shut down, something's up. I'm the canary in the coal mine. I don't curse. So if you're telling me my show is sexual in nature, you need to have sex, Mark Zuckerberg. You need to have sex. There is nothing sexual. Maybe there is. I mean, people tell me I have an incredibly hot ass, but I thought it was from all the salsa I was eating. But apparently Facebook, what am I talking about? Love and marriage. French marriage. Yeah, okay, so Donald Trump. What an evening for Donald Trump. Wednesday night dinner plus a peace deal. And Trump must have really enjoyed that meal because he left the Iranians a $300 billion tip. What does he care? It's not like he's paying for it. Supposedly, Iran is now the beneficiary of a $300 billion reconstruction fund. I'm sorry, did I say Iran? I meant to say Jared Kushner is now the beneficiary of a $300 billion reconstruction fund. There is no way Jared Kushner isn't getting a skim off the top of that $300 billion reconstruction fund. J.D. Vance Thursday assured everyone that no American tax dollars are going into that $300 billion fund because that way it's much easier to steal from. So anyway, they need the Iranians. First of all, they got 60 days to negotiate, and I'll explain to you why this is never happening. Okay? But $300 billion for reconstruction that only Jared and Steve Witkoff can provide because only real estate moguls and peace envoys like Steve Witkoff, Jared Kush, and the Trump family, only they know how to help Iran reconstruct because these people know how to build, like that reflecting pool outside the Lincoln Memorial. Trump hired a contractor who did one of his golf clubs. Trump promised it would come in at $1 million. So far, it's cost $14 million. No matter what they do, it's still green. That's not algae. It's the 14 million of your cash that Trump flushed down the toilet going through the reflecting pool. That's why it's green. Anyway, the Iran deal is not going over well with the Republicans. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican, said if Ronald Reagan saw this deal with the Iranians, he'd be, quote, rolling over in his grave. Yeah, because it doesn't include trading arms for hostages. Since when is Ronald Reagan the gold standard for making deals with the Iranians? Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz criticized the Iran deal, saying, quote, giving billions of dollars to theocratic lunatics is never a good idea. And I agree. So let's start by cutting funding for Pete Hegseth's Pentagon. Don Jr., there's Don Jr., seen here signaling to the waitress he wants 3 Coronas. That's how Don Jr. signals to the waitress. 3 Coronas, please. Don Jr. came to his father's defense, accusing Cruz of lying through his teeth about the Iranian deal. Don Jr. said Cruz's questioning of the Iran deal is, quote, the opposite of MAGA. The opposite of MAGA. MAGA, of course, being whatever's good for the Trump family. That's all MAGA is. How do we get richer? Drones. He's in the drone business now. He and Eric are selling drones to the Pentagon. Speaking of drones, Sean Hannity defended the deal, insisting, there's stuff in there that Trump hasn't told anyone about. Yeah, Trump hasn't told anyone about it because he has no idea what's in it either. Again, he's not going to read a page and a half. There is no deal. This is not a deal. Basically, it's the United States agreeing to unfreeze Iranian assets in exchange for them reopening the Strait of Hormuz, which wouldn't have been closed if Donald Trump didn't pull out of Obama's deal with Iran, which is looking more and more brilliant as Donald Trump looks dumber and stupider, which is almost impossible. You got to admire Donald Trump. So we're going to unfreeze Iranian assets in exchange for them being kind enough to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. That's what $1 trillion a year in military spending, soon to be $1.5 trillion, gets you. We run out of bombs in 30 days and say to our enemy, okay, we're done. Here's some cash. Buy yourself something nice. Can you open up Hormuz for us? Yeah. Pete Hegseth really returned the warrior ethos to the Pentagon. Good job there, Hegseth, war criminal. Lock him up. Lock him up. Money, power, and revenge. Revenge. Lock up Pete Hegseth. There are Democratic members of Congress who do not want him to be able to travel until he tells us about the 142 girls our bombs killed in that Iranian elementary school. He should not be allowed to travel. He should be locked up. He's a war criminal. There is absolutely no question that Pete Hegseth is a war criminal. The problem in America is if you commit crimes at an industrial scale, where do you start? They say, it's not good. It's not good for the country. Where do you start? So, Ben Shapiro, the conservative talk show host, called the deal a disaster that doesn't achieve Donald Trump's goals. Sure, the war, sure it did. Nobody's talking about the Epstein files. Sounds like Trump achieved all his goals. Now, one of the big criticisms about the deal comes from former Vice President Mike Pence and Steve Bannon. They are upset that Trump signed a deal that appears to unfreeze Iran's money and allows them not just to sell more oil, it allows, according to Trump, Iran can keep its missiles that I thought we destroyed. Trump said to reporters yesterday and Thursday, when asked about, wait a second, you're allowing Iran to keep its missiles? He said, of course they get to keep their missiles. They need some missiles, don't they? Unquote. No. I mean, it's the Department of War. The whole point, I thought, was to stop Iran from attacking Israel and or funneling weapons to Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah. Trump said, of course they keep all their missiles. And in the next breath, he claims to have wiped out their entire arsenal. The truth is, despite hitting 14,000 targets, our military barely made a dent in Iran's drone and missile capability. That's what your $1 trillion a year in defense spending, soon to be $1.5 trillion, gotcha. Feeling safe? Feeling big and powerful? America? Let's have another UFC cage match on the White House lawn so these weak men in our government don't feel impotent, which they are. Iran still has their ballistic missiles, at least half. And those ballistic missiles can reach as far as London. Feeling safe? It was worth it, wasn't it? It was worth it. Republican Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas, POS. Roger Marshall of Kansas, he's carrying Trump's water. And he told CNN, well, of course we need to allow Iran to keep their missiles. Quote, this is what he said. They have to be able to defend themselves, unquote. Iran has to be able to defend itself from whom? Senator Marshall? From the U.S. military. We're at war with Iran. You're going to let them keep their missiles because they have to defend themselves? But tell me again how the Republicans support our troops and are big on winning wars and never fighting a war with one arm tied behind our back. You're letting Iran keep its missiles. So one of the key parts of the, by the way, you know, I was talking to one of my sons about this. One of my heroes is Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon. And somebody once asked him, when you were walking on the moon, did you ever just start freaking out and say, I can't believe I'm on the moon? And he said, no, because you'd be amazed at what humans are able to get used to. You get this first flash of adrenaline when you step on the moon, and then you look around, I got a million things to do. He said, it's amazing what you can get used to. And don't get used to this. I refuse to get used to the fact that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, and I refuse to get used to what Donald Trump and these Republicans have done and are doing to the world. To the world. They're blocking Hormuz. It's Trump who's closed Hormuz. 40% of the fertilizer, 25% of the world's oil supplies blocked by Donald Trump. Supposedly, some stuff is now going to come through. We'll see. Iran, we will take nothing less but the complete annihilation of Iran Now it's, well, they should be allowed to keep their missiles. They have to defend themselves in case this 60-day ceasefire doesn't hold and we have to start bombing them again. They have to be able to defend themselves. So one of the key parts of this deal is Israel has to pull out of Lebanon. Hezbollah, by the way, in Lebanon, is sponsored by Iran. Well, also HelloFresh meal kits, they're also a sponsor, and Stamps.com. But mostly, Hezbollah's major sponsor is Iran. They got a pretty good podcast, Hezbollah. So the war between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon has no sign of ever abating, no matter how many times Trump calls Netanyahu, ordering him politely to stop. During a press briefing Thursday, J.D. Vance warned Netanyahu to get on board or Israel will lose the only ally it has left. Vance then closed the press briefing, going after the religious hardliners inside Netanyahu's cabinet. Vance said, quote, to some of these cabinet members in Israel who are attacking the President of the United States, the hardliners in Israel are furious about this deal because it stipulates that in order for there to be peace and Hormuz to open, Israel has to pull out of Lebanon. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. So Vance said, the other thing I would say to the cabinet members in Israel who are attacking the President of the United States, I would say is that over the last 3 months, 2/3 of the defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. By the way, I don't think you gain purchase with the nation of Jews when you refer to their country as homeland. Stirs up some memories. Most Americans, when Bush and Cheney started calling it our homeland, we knew what they were. We knew the Nazi dog whistle. So calling Israel a homeland, okay. He goes on to say, the problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump, and anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the President of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation your country is in. Thank you all, and he stormed off. So, not a bright man, J.D. Vance, because I don't think he understands the reality of the situation. Trump wants this thing to just go away. It's COVID, and he just pay whatever, make it go. Israel has skin in this game, whether you like them or not. They're not walking away because they can't. They're stuck in Israel. So, not to have Israel and Hezbollah, not to offer them a seat at the negotiating table, it's like having marriage counseling, but your children show up for it and not the mother and father. This is going to fail. How do I know it's going to fail? Because Donald Trump is involved. It's only a bilateral agreement that they're trying to iron out between Iran and the United States. It doesn't include Benjamin Netanyahu, who tricked Donald Trump into doing this. And that, in fact, that's his full name. He shortened it. His full name is Benjamin Netanyahu tricked Trump into doing this. Netanyahu tricked Trump into doing this. Who tricked? Okay. So Netanyahu is now Israel's longest-serving prime minister, facing the rage of the Israeli people who view this new deal that Trump is signing. They see it as a major blow to Israeli security, and especially the people in Netanyahu's coalition government. They do not like being told to pull out of Lebanon. They do not like being told to give up their aspirations of settling the land south of Lebanon's Litani River under the guise of creating a buffer zone. Under the current leadership of Israel, they have a cabinet of expansionists attempting to create greater Israel with settlements not just in the West Bank, but Gaza and southern Lebanon. That's their plan. They've said it. Their plan is to ethnically cleanse Gaza. They've said it. That's their plan. It's so ugly, nobody likes to repeat it. But Netanyahu's government, their plan is to ethnically cleanse all of Gaza. And to colonize southern Lebanon, greater Israel. That's the plan. So this deal is worthless unless Israel and Hezbollah are at the bargaining table. Unless you get Israel and Hezbollah to go along with whatever Trump is signing, it ain't going to happen. And Netanyahu said yesterday, I have no intention of pulling out of southern Lebanon. Well, there you go. So the deal is not happening. Netanyahu's defense minister is named Israel Katz. Okay? Israel Katz. And he said, doesn't matter what's in this memorandum of understanding, Israel isn't leaving Lebanon. These are the ultra-nationalists inside Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government. They're no different from Pete Hegseth. There is no other way to describe Benjamin Netanyahu and his government other than by calling them ethno-nationalist bigots, Jewish supremacists. You got a problem with the truth? These are Jewish supremacists who want to ethnically cleanse Gaza. That's the plan. And Trump and Kushner have signed on to it, as has Tony Blair. These are ethno-nationalist bigots. It's the truth. They are Jewish supremacists. National Security Minister of Israel, Ben-Gvir, is a Jewish supremacist, as is Israel's finance minister. They couldn't care less what Donald Trump wants. And Netanyahu knows that if he caves into any pressure from Donald Trump, his coalition government, made up of ethno-nationalist Jewish supremacists, will collapse. Now, there's a big election in Israel this fall. Netanyahu may have to call an election before that. It will happen if his ultra-hard right ethno-nationalist partners abandon him. And should Netanyahu's government collapse, Netanyahu, currently 76, governing under a cloud of indictments for his manifest corruption. If he is no longer prime minister, his corruption trial then can proceed. And even worse, he will have to account for October 7th, 2023, which happened mysteriously on his watch. How was that possible? So the longer Netanyahu stays in office, the more time he has to avoid justice. Kind of reminds me of another leader here in the United States who will not go gently into the night in 2029. Former Israeli Prime Minister and Jeffrey Epstein house guest Ehud Barak said Netanyahu failed. He said Israel is weaker and Iran is stronger now than before the bombing campaign began. So what we're hearing in Israel and here in the United States is our two countries lost and Iran won. Why? Why? Why did we lose and why did Iran win? Because Israel and the United States, under their current leadership, they see diplomacy as weakness. It's our way or the highway. They view compromise as failure. They think anything short of wiping out your enemy is humiliation. In his inaugural address on January 20th, 1961, John F. Kennedy said, quote, "Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate." So go back and study the Cuban Missile Crisis. Go back and look at how he avoided nuclear annihilation. And most people agree he wouldn't have gone in so deep into Vietnam, which is one of the reasons a lot of people celebrated on November 22nd, 1963. John Kennedy knew you can't wipe out your enemy. He served heroically in World War II, and he saw you cannot wipe out the Japanese or the Germans. After World War II, we didn't wipe them out, even though it was total war. Israel and the United States promise to wipe out Hamas and the Iranian regime. Can't be done. Can't be done. It's the myth of war. It's the myth of war. You can kill the leaders, but you're not going to wipe out the people and what they believe in. The myth of war, salting Carthage. The idea there can never be victory unless you wipe everyone off the map. That's what we hear. It's become a talking point that's so familiar that there can be no peace in Gaza until we eliminate Hamas. You're not going to eliminate Hamas. You can keep killing their leaders. You can keep killing the leaders of Hezbollah. You can keep killing the Iranian leadership. You can keep killing Osama bin Laden and all. You're not going to wipe out Al-Qaeda. You're not going to wipe out what is essentially a cause or a movement. You have to learn how to live with cancer. You treat it. Can't do it. Maybe we drop some nuclear bombs. Maybe we could wipe out the whole region. I think in order to wipe out your enemy, you're going to also have to wipe out yourself. And that is the truth. Anybody who says there can be no peace with the Palestinians until we eliminate Hamas, you're part of the problem. You are not going to eliminate Hamas. You're not going to eliminate Hezbollah. You're going to have to negotiate with them and try to turn them into a political party, which both Hezbollah and Hamas are. Hamas won the parliamentary elections. Israel and the United States under George W. Bush didn't like the results, so we didn't recognize Hamas as the leader of the Palestinian parliament, so they became even more radical and violent. You're not going to wipe out Hamas. You're not going to wipe out the Viet Cong. I know this. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Iranian government are still standing despite all the bombs. They're still in charge. The Taliban, 21 years, still in charge. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for joining me. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up. I got some more stuff to. Maybe I'll do a show tomorrow, but yeah, I'm in a foul mood. It's hard being this sexy. Hey, help me out because they are making it. Please like this episode. Please share it. Please subscribe. This is an audio podcast. It's the best way to enjoy the show, not being distracted by my incredibly hot ass that Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook can't seem to take his eyes off. Wherever you get your podcasts, even on YouTube, they have a music app where you can save yourself some bandwidth and download this as an audio podcast and go for a walk. And subscribe to my newsletter. Go to davidfeldmanshow.com. Go to shopdavidfeldman.com. And you can buy this. This is one of my best sellers. Donald Trump, the Scream coffee mug. And July 4th is coming up. And what better for a July 4th barbecue than a Hope You're in the Mood for Diarrhea apron. My big seller. Hope You're in the Mood for Diarrhea. It's actually the only thing I sell is that. So if you're invited to a July 4th barbecue, bring that as a gift. Go to shopdavidfeldman.com. And while you're over there, make a donation. Okay. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. And I got a lot more stuff to talk about, but it can wait. Well, it can't wait, but I'm in a foul mood. Did I remind you of everything? Okay. Thank you, everybody.